Have you ever wondered why your dog leaves tufts of fur all over the house in the spring? Or why deer look so patchy at this time of year? Today, we're diving into the science of shedding, why animals lose their winter coats, how it works, and some of the weirdest shedding adaptations in nature.
All right. So I think we need to start with the basics. Starting at the beginning is always a very good place to start. As Julie Andrews once reminded us in an amazing movie that Dustin doesn't like to watch with me, what triggers shedding in animals? Is it the warmer weather? Is there more to it? That's the first question we're going to tackle.
Okay, so the primary trigger for shedding is called the photoperiod. That's the length or the amount of daylight. So as our day starts to get longer in terms of daylight, the animals sense that sort of intrinsically, and that triggers the hormones that get their shedding processes to start. So as days get longer in the spring, their brains detect that and they begin to regulate their hair growth and loss. Some animals shed in patches like deer, while others undergo a full molt. For example, snowshoe hares. Fur shedding basically happens in three main phases called anagen, telogen, and exogen. Anagen is when hair actively grows out of the follicle. The telogen is the resting phase where hair growth stops and the follicle becomes dormant for a time. And then lastly is the shedding phase or the exogen, where old hair is shed to make way for new growth.
Yeah. And so, what I think is interesting as an area of this topic to explore is why some animals shed in patches, but yet we know there's other animals that shed completely. Like they molt very quickly in comparison, right?
Well, it depends on the animal's ecological needs. Deer shed in patches because it helps them maintain some insulation while they're adapting to warmer weather. Basically, they hold on to whole patches of fur, winter fur, until the new fur is under it and it kind of pushes it out all at once. Hares molt completely because they need to change their camouflage from white snow camouflage in the winter to their light brown, bare ground camouflage for spring.
Right. And so that's mammals. So now we've covered the hair growth cycle and why some of them molt all at once versus others will do it in patches. But other animals shed too. And they also have variations in how they shed or molt, correct?
Right. Molting is a nearly universal process among birds because feathers wear out, they need to be replaced for better flight, insulation, and display purposes to attract their lady friends, mostly. But the frequency and extent of molting can vary significantly between species. Some of them go through a catastrophic molt. This is when a bird replaces all of its feathers at once rather than gradually. This can take anywhere from a few weeks to a couple of months. A great example of this is Canada geese, one of your favorite birds, and one easy to see. When they have their babies in the spring, they don't really have a need to fly. They need to protect their baby. So they replace all of their feathers at once, and they actually go through weeks where they can't fly.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yep. This can be really highly efficient for birds that need their feathers in top conditions for specific purposes, like waterproofing or long distance flight, but it can leave them vulnerable during the molting season. It impacts their ability to fly or perform other crucial activities, and it can interrupt their ability to control their body temperature as well. So most of them do it kind of late in the summer when the weather is pretty mild. The second type is called a biennial molt. This occurs once every 2 years. Species with this pattern tend to have feathers that are really durable and resistant to wear and tear. They're energy efficient and it allows birds to spend more time on other activities like breeding or long distance migration. Birds that go through this biennial molt process tend to be large seabirds like albatrosses. Next are birds that rarely molt. These are birds that have feathers that are highly specialized because they live in stable environments where feather wear is minimal. They're adapted to their particular ecological needs, such as living in water or having feathers that don't experience much wear. So examples for this are ostriches, emus, seabirds with specialized feathers like puffins and birds of paradise. And then finally, some birds don't molt at all. They simply molt so infrequently that it's practically negligible. They selectively are bred to reduce molting and have evolved in the environment where feather wear is minimal. Examples include domesticated birds like chicken breeds and some tropical birds too.
Let's move on to reptiles at this point. So, mammals shed because of the seasons, birds molt because of their activities, so to speak. Reptiles don't seem like they would shed or molt for either of those reasons.
Right, but reptiles molt for another reason. Primarily, snakes and lizards molt as a response to growth, not the season. So younger reptiles literally shed their skin because their body has outgrown it. They grow fresh new skin to their new size, and their old skin kind of splits off, and often they can slither out of it, almost leaving it in one piece behind.
I feel like we've fully covered exactly what's going on from a birds and mammals and reptile standpoint. But what we haven't talked about is marine mammals. How do they handle the whole process of shedding?
Well, they sort of continually slough off their old skin cells to maintain a smooth hydrodynamic surface. Think dolphins and porpoises, things like that. This helps them reduce drag and allows them to swim efficiently. Some marine mammals, like dolphins, have specialized skin that produces a mucus-like coating. This reduces the friction and protects them against parasites. It's sort of like a scum layer on the outside of their skin.
Yum.
Which the same is true for your like aquarium pet fish. That's why you shouldn't pat your axolotl, for example.
Yes.
Not that he's a marine mammal. He's not. But seals and sea lions undergo seasonal changes in their undercoat as well. These are for species with fur, or there's changes in their blubber thickness as well. So this helps them to adapt to temperature changes. Unique challenges like barnacle growth on their skin, for example, can also be impacted. So they need to slough off their skin, so it helps them shed barnacles and make sure they don't get overtaken by that parasite, basically. Humpback whales are like this. They've developed rough patches of skin where barnacles can attach without causing harm. So they've kind of accepted that they need to adapt to be able to handle those sorts of parasites. And then marine mammals that don't need fur or feathers, this is because their environment, the water, provides a consistent temperature regulation and less wear and tear on their skin. If you live in the ocean, particularly if you're not a long-distance migrant, the temperature of your environment doesn't shift very much.
What do you think some of the strangest shedding adaptations are in nature?
Oh, that's a good question. I think caribou and reindeer are pretty interesting. They shed their whole antler every year, not just their fur. So we've got a great moose antler on our mantle over there that I love looking at year round. But when I know it's that time of year for them to lose their antlers, someday I'll find a deer antler out in the woods, but I've yet to come across my own shed antler. So those are pretty cool. Males shed them after the mating season and females shed them after giving birth, typically. Horses grow and shed extra facial whiskers depending on the season. So
That's cute.
yeah. Hey, I don't know why they need that. And then domestic animals like dogs, some of them don't shed naturally, essentially because we've selectively bred them for our own convenience.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you said you're not entirely sure why the whiskers thing happens, because it's hormones. So here we go with Geek Alert.
Well, hormones trigger, but why do they need extra whiskers?
I don't know. I don't know. Here's what I do know, though. All right. So antler shedding in males is testosterone and progesterone levels in females. So that is what's triggering those things to happen. And whisker growth is a seasonal change affected by the melatonin production in a horse.
Right, but I understand the biological reason for the antlers to be shed, because the males use antlers to battle one another and assert their dominance. And once the mating season's over, they no longer have that need, so they can shed the extra weight, the sort of entanglement danger that the antlers provide. But I don't understand how horses use their extra whiskers.
I know. I'm now remembering when I was reading up on the melatonin being the cause of this. Now I remember. So they
are grazing animals, I'll give you that. And in the wintertime, there's less
dark.
grass.
It's dark. At different times, at different seasons, there's varying levels of darkness. And being grazing animals, they need more whiskers at certain times of year to help them sense their surroundings when they're trying to eat.
There we have it, folks. I always thought I had the sense to grow my whiskers more in the winter just because I was like a hardy New England man and that it was the right thing to do for the cold, but it's so that I can graze better.
Right. So if I ask you to sum up for our audience why these variations have evolved, what is the answer?
It's all about survival and adaptation.
Exactly.
So shedding helps conserve energy, whiskers improve sensory perception, and non-shedding coats and dogs were bred for human convenience. This is all a reminder of how adaptable nature is. Whether it's a deer losing its winter coat or snake shedding its skin, these processes are all about growth, survival, and renewal. And I'd like to know from our audience, have you ever come across some evidence of molting or shedding out in the wild? Drop us a comment. Let us know about it.
That's all for today's episode. But before we head off on our next adventure, this is just a quick reminder that you can find Dustin's wildlife photography and links to all of our content channels on our website, hikeandhearth.com.
And we love being part of the YouTube nature lovers community, so keep sharing your comments on your experiences with nature, wildlife, and conservation. And if you're not already subscribed, be sure to join us.
Yes, and if you're on Substack, we just started our newsletter, Nature Notes with Hike and Hearth, so we can expand on some of the topics that we cover here on the vodcast. We have a whole bunch of other plans in mind for the Substack. We're having a great time on Notes, engaging with the nature community over there. It's a lot of fun. Subscribers are ramping up, so if you are on Substack, look us up and be sure to join us over there for deep dive summaries of our content. Okay, Dustin, are you ready to send us off for today?
I sure am. Until next time, friends, keep your eyes on the skies and your hearts in the wild.
Bye, everyone.